Continuation and finishing the defense of the West, this lecture will cover the importance of an educated public in a democracy, how to educate the public, the role of the free press, the importance of having a middle class and equal opportunity. To educate the public, Mill realized that the government must not run education. Government runs education. Government will only show one side, their side. They will indoctrinate the public. In order to prevent the government from indoctrinating the public, Mill favored, and so do Republicans generally, what is called the voucher system. In the voucher system, the government pays for education out of tax monies collected just like today, except instead of doing it the way we do it today, where the government builds the schools, government hires the teachers, government designs and enforces a curriculum, all teachers are given at the beginning of the semester, at the beginning of the day, what's called a lesson plan. They're supposed to follow it completely. They're not supposed to add anything. They're not supposed to subtract anything. If it ever seemed to you when you were in the public schools like your teachers were as bored with what they were teaching you as you were bored with learning it, that's because your teachers were bored with what they were teaching you. They don't get to teach what they want to teach, what they find interesting and important. They teach what the government tells them to teach. Really, they're not so much teachers, they're just pipelines from the government into the minds of the students. Instead of doing it that way, where the money for the child's education, let's say in the state of California, about $10,000, instead of giving that money, the $10,000, right to your local neighborhood school, your local neighborhood government-run indoctrination factory, give that money to the parents in the form of a ticket. That's the voucher. It's a ticket, one for each child, redeemable at the school of the parent's choice. If schools get too crowded, I'll mention we could use a lottery. But what kind of schools will parents pick? What kind of products do consumers pick? What ways of living do people pick? What kind of political parties do citizens pick? They will pick the best. Nothing more than the mechanism of the marketplace, why I call this the defense of the West. It's the mechanism of the marketplace applied to education. Good schools, of course, every parent wants their kid to go to the best school. That's a recipe for being a success in life. And so the good schools, the kids will go to the school, kid goes to the school, parents give the voucher that they got from the government to the school, school takes the voucher, say for the $10,000, gives it to the government gives the school the $10,000. Good schools then will do with their money what good businesses do with their money. They'll try to expand, build more classrooms, hire more teachers, bring high quality education to more people. Bad quality schools, what parent wants their kid to go to a bad quality school? That's a recipe for giving your kid a failure of a life. They won't attract very many or any students. Eventually they will go broke. And so this should get us high quality schools. And I'm not sure how many of you have heard of the voucher system, although it has become more well known in recent times. I've been following this for some years. I found this in the Economist magazine, very pro-free enterprise, pro-capitalist, pro-West. This is their obituary of the great capitalist economist Milton Friedman. Education is a case in point, not least in Mr. Friedman's homeland, the United States. For many years, he argued that parents should be given more choice in how and where their children are schooled. The government, he said, should not spend money on their behalf, but should give them vouchers that they could spend on the education they thought best. Competition between schools would do more than any amount of bureaucratic direction to raise the often woeful standards of American primary and secondary education. This magazine has long subscribed wholeheartedly to the idea of school vouchers. They are making headway, but too slowly, blocked by teachers' unions. When did state-protected producers ever embrace competition? And sometimes in court. That was from 2006. The Economist covers this again in 2007. This magazine has long argued that competition and freedom in education, as elsewhere, are the way to encourage innovation and raise standards for all. Parents should choose the schools, and money should follow the student, with more cash following the poorest and those who are hardest to teach. The Economist adds this, and I like this part. For the poorest and those who are hardest to teach, their vouchers should be worth even more money, so they're the first ones that the school will want to select to be their student. And this one from The Economist in 2008, the John McCain for President campaign. It was a shrewd choice of topic. Mr. McCain favors giving vouchers that would allow parents whose children are stuck in terrible schools to send them to better ones, whether public, private, or parochial, and believes that public money should follow the child, not the dictate of some education bureaucrat. Wherever vouchers have been offered, poor black parents have seized them with both hands. Poor black parents, poor parents of all races, I would guess, seize them with both hands. Give me that voucher, give me a choice. Let me get my kid out of this terrible inner city school that's more like a jail than an institution of education. Let me send my kid to a good school, La Jolla High, Rancho Bernardo High, Beverly Hills High, Scarsdale High, wherever poor black parents have seized them with both hands. And this one is new, May 18th, 2019. I'm giving this lecture in June of 2019. I saw this in The Economist last month on Cory Booker, running for president right now, and the former mayor of Newark, New Jersey. Poor inner city school class struggle. If Mr. Booker believes deeply in anything, it is school choice. In 1998, when he was still a little-known city councilor, he founded Excellent Education for Everyone, which advocates charter schools and voucher programs. Newark, of course, a very poor inner city ghetto. Wherever vouchers have been offered, poor black parents have seized them with both hands. Newark, New Jersey, poor black parents seizing them with both hands. Cory Booker, mayor of Newark, New Jersey, advocating for voucher programs. And this last one. Meanwhile, Democrats in Congress quietly voted to kill a voucher program that allows 1,700 students, mostly black, poor, or both, to escape Washington, D.C.'s awful public schools and attend private ones. Mr. Obama supports killing the program, but his flacks say he wants the students currently enrolled in it, who include 2 at his daughter's excellent private school, they will be allowed to complete their studies. How kind. Little bit of sarcasm there, I think, from The Economist. The few who are in the program now will be allowed to complete their studies, then the program will end. Everybody else in the future is screwed. How kind. This should get us high-quality schools. Does not yet get us the teaching of all sides. After all, if you leave it to parents, parents might not choose to send their kids to schools that teach all sides. I know that my parents wouldn't have. If your parents were anything like my parents would not have chosen to a school that taught me all sides. My parents would have chosen to send me to a school that taught me how many sides can you guess? One side. And whose side is that, can you guess? My parents' side. And so instead of getting the government's point of view rammed down my throat, I get my parents' point of view rammed down my throat. Am I any better off? You are a little better off, although it might not seem immediately obvious. At least if the parents run the schools, then when you graduated from your particular parent-run indoctrination factory, you would get a job out in the real world. You would meet people who had different types of parents, went to different types of schools, learned different types of things. Then you could hear different things also, but if the government runs the schools, there's only one point of view prevalent everywhere. Hooray for us, we're the best, there is no room for improvement. You could never encounter a different point of view. But we think we can maximize the teaching of many points of view. Even in these parent-run schools, we can prevent the parents from simply turning the schools into parent-run indoctrination factories if we do the following three things. First, every so often, everybody has to take the same test. And second, very important, the questions on the test should be made up by the headmasters, the principals, the top teachers at all the different schools. Teachers from all the different schools. They'll put questions on the test. Why would he want this? Teachers from the different schools submit questions for the test, so there will be input from all the different sides. If the way we would like to see this, say there are predominantly 4 different points of view prevalent amongst the parents, we have Democratic parents and Republican parents, of course. Maybe after the On Liberty lecture, we also have Libertarian parents and Socialist parents. If the school teaches only one point of view, the parents' point of view, 1 out of the 4, that's a 25%, that's a miserable failure. Even if the school taught 3 of the 4 points of view, maximum score the kid could get, 3 out of 4, 75%, still perilously close to failure. What if the kid makes a couple of careless mistakes? To give the kid the maximum chance to pass the test, the school would have to teach all 4 points of view, all points of view. To whatever extent the school does not teach all points of view, and to that extent the kid can't pass, then, number 3, kid is left back, of course, and has to repeat the subject, and the parents should be fined money. That will give them an interest in their child's education. And the fine, all fines should be some percentage of the parent's income. 1% of the relevant line of Form 1040 on last year's federal income tax, not a flat rate, $100, $500, $1,000. That would have tremendous impact on the poor, almost no impact on the rich. Make it, say, 1% of your income. So for Bill Gates, he's got $60 billion, 1%, his fine is $600 million. Alex Rodriguez, say $250 million, so he would have to pay $250,000. I would have to pay $1,000. Now, granted, they still have a lot more discretionary income than I have, but at least it socks everybody fairly substantially. I remember reading a story once about a guy who was tooling around a village in Switzerland, I believe, in his fast car doing 175 miles an hour. They pulled him over. The fine was some percentage of income. They're doing this, by the way, in London and in Holland. He had to pay $275,000 was the fine for speeding that fast. Now, granted, he was a very rich guy, but it's a lot more impactful than if he was fined $100 or $200 for speeding. I remember I once had a student, very wealthy, free condo in La Costa, free car, free gasoline, hundreds and hundreds of dollars a week, spending money, couldn't figure out how to spend it all. If she came to campus a little bit late, she didn't care where she parked her car. She got a parking ticket. She didn't care. She had plenty of money to pay it. You have to care about where you park your car. You have to care about getting a parking ticket. Rich people, they don't have to care. They got plenty of money. Why do we do things this way? Who made these laws anyway? Obviously, rich people did, so they don't have to care. So now, if the school doesn't teach all sides, then to that extent the kid can't pass, can't get on with their education. Parents will be socked with this fine, since it's some percentage of income. It will be annoying to all income groups. Parents then will try to go to their school and demand, teach all sides. I want my kid to pass. I want my kid to get on with their life. I'm tired of paying this fine as a percentage of my income. It's annoying. If the school still doesn't teach all sides and the kid doesn't pass again, what are the parents going to do with that voucher, with that ticket, next time they get a choice? Choose a different school. This will get us high-quality schools that teach all sides. We really don't have anything like this, of course. We have government-run schools that teach only one side. I'll read a few articles that I clipped out of the university newspapers while I was teaching there. This one, called American Education, A Lesson in Order. I will confess the author of this editorial was one of my former students who was writing up these points into an editorial for the Daily Aztec. I love the way he put this, by the way, extra credit. The English, math, and science courses my classmates and I have been taking cleverly conceal the real subject matter. Introduction to Social Pressure, Conformity 101, Intermediate Concession to Authority, Advanced Order. The reason for this somewhat limited curriculum soon becomes obvious. The teachers themselves, the product of our indoctrination system, great point, very important point. The teachers are themselves the product of our indoctrination system, and so are incapable of educating students. Such teachers can only pass on the knowledge with which they themselves have been inculcated. That is, follow instructions, use a number 2 pencil, and stay in your seat until the bell rings. And in case you think things are different at expensive private schools, when I taught at the University of San Diego, $50,000 a year, $200,000 minimum for your bachelor's degree. I found this in the editorial section. USD's philosophy and mission states that it, quote, fosters a climate within which all members of the university community have opportunity for free inquiry and expression. The climate we believe, which most instructors at USD offer, is one of studying information and spewing it out in a test. Perhaps this is not the most effective way of learning, and they repeat exactly the same point at USD. Deterioration. Education stops short of real learning. Information is given to students either through textbooks or by lecture, simply to be memorized and spewed out in an exam. I think in one of my previous lectures, Philosophy is More Pleasurable Than Sex, I said memorize and spit. The USD newspaper, memorize and spew. I say memorize and spit. I'm not as genteel. I'm from the Bronx, but I really like this one from High Tech High, a new high school in San Diego. Memorize and flush. Nice image. Memorize and flush, memorize and flush, memorize and flush. And this one from the Daily Aztec from a graduating senior. Oh, I really love this one. She writes, I'm sick of school. I'm especially sick of doing mindless busy work so my teachers can give me a meaningless grade. It's such a game. You have to do the busy work so you can get the units, fill your requirements, and get a degree. So big deal. I can get a piece of paper that says I successfully completed the game. But what did I really learn in the 4+ years I will have spent at this institution of higher learning? Not nearly enough. And part of the reason is you have to get so caught up in playing the game. Instead of really learning something of value, I learned how to memorize the bold print in my textbooks and how to master multiple guess exams. The irony is that there have been many occasions when I have been very interested in a subject, but I haven't had time to really focus on it because I was so busy trying to keep up with all my busy work assignments. And when I say busy work, I mean stupid, time-consuming, tedious assignments that teachers make you do so they have something to grade you on. Although I have always hated busy work, I am especially insulted by it at the college level. I thought going to college would be the end of my busy work days. I thought college was where you got to take classes that were meaningful to you and where you would really learn things of value, but no such luck. College has turned out to be 5 more years of filling Scantron bubbles and bogus requirements. Sounds like she really got a lot out of her education at San Diego State. But ideally, we should teach people all sides. I tried to do that in my classes, in my lectures. What's God's point of view? What's the devil's point of view? What's evolution's point of view? What's your point of view? The first lectures I posted. What's the defense of the West? What I'm doing now. What's the criticism of the West? I've already done the Marxism, socialism, communism, war communism lectures. What do you think? Population educated to see all sides, think for themselves. Once we have a public educated to see all sides, think for themselves, the next great Western element we need, a free press to show them all sides, so they have something to think about. Free press initially means government does not run the press, because if government runs the press, as we see in countries where government does run the press, government won't show all sides, they'll show only one side, their side. We need a free press to show us all sides. And we do have a free press here in the sense that government does not run the press, but I'm not really sure that we get all sides. I've always liked to say, how many major newspapers do we have here in San Diego, 7th largest city in the country? 1, the Union Tribune. Los Angeles to the north, one of the biggest cities in the world, the Los Angeles Times, pretty much all they've got up there. New York City, where I'm from, maybe the media capital of the world, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal. I used to say, until it was bought up by Murdoch, who owns Fox, that that's the one to read. It focuses on economics. That's the main thing in the world. The Daily News, the New York Post, although traditionally they run pictures of scantily clad women on page 3, the page 3 girls. That's their approach to reporting the news. Newsday out on Long Island, 5th largest paper in the country, that traditionally had been owned by the Los Angeles Times. Sometimes students have said to me, Steve, you're behind the times. There's more. We can watch CBS, ABC, NBC, CNN, and MSNBC. Whenever anyone has said anything like that to me, I always like to reply, citing a lyric from one of my favorite bands, David Byrne of the Talking Heads, his album, True Stories. Note the album is called True Stories. First lyric of the second song, you got the CBS, you got the ABC, you got Time and Newsweek, they're all the same to me. And the reason they really are all the same, in reality, freedom of the press is guaranteed only to those who own one. In reality, freedom of the press is guaranteed only to those who own one. And what does it take to own a newspaper, a television news station, a radio news station? Mr. Turner, Mr. Murdoch have to have a lot of money. And so, see the Iran lecture, by the way. Really, we're only getting the point of view of people who have a lot of money. Ideally, a free press to show us all sides. Maybe now, by the way, the internet is promising some hope for the future, although now it's even harder to figure out what's real news and what's fake news. I've been accusing the media of giving fake news, by the way, since a lot longer than our current president. Once we have a population educated to see all sides, think for themselves, the next thing we need is the rule of the middle class. The middle class should have the bulk of the political power, not the upper class. The upper class can be lazy and out of touch. Not to say that rich people are lazy. Not all rich people are lazy. But rich people are the only ones who can afford to be lazy. If middle class people are lazy, they wind up in the lower class. Why, most of people go to college, so they don't wind up in the lower class. If lower class people are lazy, especially back when Mill was alive, they froze. They starved. The rich are the only ones who can afford to be lazy. And the rich can be out of touch with the needs of the majority. Rich people have lots of money in the bank. That's what makes them rich. They're not under the same monthly pressures to pay their bills as everybody else. They don't understand the daily financial realities, the daily financial struggles that we all face. They're not good ones to make the laws governing the majority. Nor should the lower class have the bulk of the political power. the lower class is too uneducated, and so this would be the proper place of literacy tests. Before you can vote, you have to show that you are literate. You are not illiterate. You have to show that you can read. They give you a newspaper. You have to show that you can read the newspaper, because if you couldn't read the newspaper, you didn't know what was going on. If you didn't know what was going on, if you don't know what's going on, you can't make an educated decision. If you can't make an educated decision, you're probably not going to make the right decision. You're going to vote to take our country in the wrong way. We're better off if you don't vote. And we did have literacy tests in the United States until 1963. They were outlawed by Lyndon Baines Johnson and the Voting Rights Act. Literacy tests were used in the United States to discriminate against black people in the states of the former Confederacy. I'm sure you'll find this hard to believe that they would do that in the states of the former Confederacy. After the Civil War freed the slaves, but in practical terms it didn't do them any good. The white people still owned all the land, the white people still owned all the money, so what in some places was a very small white minority, they figured out a very neat way of politically disenfranchising the black majority. Let's give them literacy tests. They have no money, they have no schools, they have no teachers, they won't be able to pass. Then none of the black people would be able to vote, only members of the white minority would be able to vote. Under those circumstances, they were discriminatory, and it was good that they were abolished. I hope it's obvious. I would never teach anything that was discriminatory as part of the defense of the West. But with fairness to Mill, with the voucher system, everyone has access to an equally good education. Under those circumstances, it might not be such a bad idea. Although today, of course, you don't have to be able to read the newspaper to know what's going on. You can listen to the news on the radio, you can watch the news on television, but along these lines, one of my former colleagues at San Diego State, I think she was joking, claimed that before the United States could attack any given country, a majority of the American people should have to be able to locate that country on a map of the world. Unless a majority of the American people can point to a map, say that's Afghanistan, that's Iraq, that's Venezuela, that's Cuba, we should not be allowed to attack people if we don't know where they are. And also, along these lines, you should have to be able to clearly explain the concept of the number 21 trillion. How many billions go into 21 trillion? How many millions go into 21 trillion? I select that number, 21 trillion, because that is the size of our national debt. If you don't understand how big a number that is, you don't understand how deeply in debt our country is and what a negative impact this is likely to have on your financial future. But the middle class, then, they have to be vigorous, they have to be in touch, and especially members of the rising middle class, rising from the middle class into the upper class, making big money, making millions of dollars quickly, rising from the middle class to the upper class, making millions of dollars quickly, because to be successful in business takes the same talent as being successful in government. To be successful in business, you have to be able to figure out what the public needs and wants, what they want to buy today, what they're going to want to buy tomorrow, and be more efficient than anybody else. So your costs will be lower, your price will be lower, everybody will buy from you, you'll make a lot of money. Same talent we want from the people in government. They should be able to figure out what we need and want, what we need to do today to get rid of this massive federal deficit, what we're going to need to do tomorrow to pay down the $21 trillion debt, and do it efficiently. Nice to have an efficiently run government. Doesn't doesn't waste our hard-earned taxpayer money. This is the way to get an efficient government. Elect successful business people. They know how to be efficient. And almost any time a successful business person runs for office, this is part of their appeal. Look, I'm a successful business person. I know not only how to spend money like your big spending politicians in Sacramento and Washington, D.C. Anybody can spend money. You've noticed it's easy to spend money. I also know how to keep costs down. Every business I have ever operated has turned a profit. I hear you folks in California and the United States, you're billions, trillions of dollars in debt. And some politicians, I won't say from which political party, are talking about needing to raise taxes so we don't lose all of our government programs. Well, no business I have ever operated has run at a deficit. Every business I have ever operated has turned a profit. Elect me to be the leader of your government. I'll turn this deficit stuff around. We'll be making a profit. We'll have a surplus and you can have some of your tax money back. How does that sound? I remember during a recent campaign, Mitt Romney said to Hillary Clinton, I ran a major corporation. I ran a major state. She never even ran a corner store. I know how to run big, complicated organizations like government. Elect somebody who knows how to run a big corporation. They can run a big government also. And to find the truly talented members from every class in the society, upper class, middle class, lower class, we need to have equal opportunity. Equal opportunity, not just a nice sounding phrase indicating justice, although equal opportunity is a nice sounding phrase indicating justice, but equal opportunity is much more important than that. It is essential to find the truly talented people we want running our society. And this does not have to be exact equal opportunity. That is probably impossible in such a complicated world, but it's also not required. Approximate equal opportunity will do. After all, if you see success in life as being like success in a marathon, it's a very long race. Why, I know I have figured out if you give me a 19-mile lead, I can beat the best marathoners in the world. When I was a little younger, I only needed a 15-mile lead. Now I think I have figured out I could walk just fast enough. If you give me a 19-mile lead, I can walk just fast enough to beat the best marathoners in the world. Doesn't show that I had any talent, just shows that I had a big lead. On the other hand, if you give me a 3 or 4 or 5-mile lead, any decent marathoner will catch me and beat me easily. So it's okay for somebody to have something of a lead. In the end, true talent will still win out, but you don't want anyone to have too big a lead, then they'll win, not because then they had any talent, just because they had a big lead. And to get equal opportunity for everyone, first we need an equally good education for everyone, provided by the voucher system. And here I like to add modern social welfare programs, breakfast and lunch for the children of the poor, medical care for the children of the poor. How are the children of the poor supposed to concentrate on their studies, their educational opportunities, if their parents are too poor or ignorant to feed them before they go to school in the morning? And so when they get to school, the government buys them breakfast so they have calories to fuel their studying through the morning. Then when those calories run out, they get lunch to give them more calories, to give them more energy to continue their studies through the afternoon. I know for me to give these lectures to the maximum extent of my ability, I need to have a good night's sleep. I always make sure I get at least 8 hours, and I need adequate food. I always make sure I have at least a banana or a box of raisins with me. We can give them food when they get to school. We can give them food when they get to school. I've never been exactly sure how we can make it so that the students get a good night's sleep, although I remember when I was in elementary school, we used to have what was called heads down time. If the teacher saw that people were getting tired and cranky, she would turn down the lights, we would put our heads down and close our eyes, rest our brains, have heads down time. I noticed sometimes even in the middle of my college lecture, some of the students would just spontaneously declare it's heads down time. I knew, of course, they were probably working the night shift and didn't even want to go to school, but they couldn't miss one of my exciting lectures, and so their eyes were tired, so their eyes were closed, but that didn't mean their ears weren't open and that they were listening intently to every word that was said. And if that's not true, please don't tell me. I'm better off not knowing. Breakfast and lunch for the children of the poor, medical care for the children of the poor, equally good educational opportunities, and for the second part of equal opportunity, Mill wants to limit inheritance. Parents should only be allowed to leave their kid or give their kid limited inheritance and gifts to the amount sufficient to constitute a moderate independence. Independence means independent from work. You will be moderately well off for the rest of your life without having to work. What would you need in San Diego to be moderately well off? $100,000 a year? That's roughly what they pay me in my retirement. I'm quite happy with that. If that's not enough for you, $200,000 a year, $300,000 a year, every year for the rest of your life without having to work. This is not aimed at the middle class. I used to tell my students at San Diego State, if your parents were that wealthy, then you're not going to a school like San Diego State. You're going to an expensive private school where they give you the classes that you need to graduate in 4 years. I used to say when I taught at the expensive private University of San Diego, if your parents were that rich, if my parents were that rich, I wouldn't even be going to college and jumping through the hoops they make you jump through to get that modern college diploma. If my parents were that wealthy, I would be hanging out on a beach in some exotic part of the world hoping my parents died soon. This is aimed not at the middle class, but at the upper class, the aristocracy in England. The king, his family, and friends had complete stranglehold control on England's economy and political system, passed control to their kids, who passed control to their kids, who passed control to their kids. My brother referred to this as a spermocracy. Whoever gets the sperm, they get the money and the power. The problem here, one of the problems here, even if the person who made the money was hardworking and intelligent, the children of people who are hardworking and intelligent are not also always hardworking and intelligent, especially if the intelligent parent was out working hard making the money and the kid was raised by somebody else. Then the children of people who are hardworking and intelligent often turn out to be spoiled and lazy. USC, University of Spoiled Children. USD, the University of Spoiled Daughters, although I never really noticed that when I was teaching there, I have to say. Born on third base, act like they hit a triple. To make sure our leaders are the talented from this generation, not the children of the talented from the previous generation. Limit inheritance. Don't let them leave complete control of everything to their kids. Break up the aristocracy. Break the upper crust. Make room for the cream of the crop. The truly talented members from every class of the society, upper class, middle class, lower class, have the opportunity to develop their talent by getting a good education, the voucher system, having room to show their talent, by having room to rise to the top of business and the professions. Then we will see who are the talented from this generation, not the children of the talented from the previous generation. You, the talented from this generation, you're the ones we want running the businesses, running the government, and since they are so talented, they will expect to be well paid. You can't expect to see people leaving jobs in the private sector where they get paid millions, tens of millions of dollars, taking a job in government where they make only a couple of $100,000. That would be stupid. That would be suspicious. Pay them well. They serve us faithfully. They'll deserve it. I've already taken care of that. Defense of the West, the last 3 lectures, the importance of individual liberty, the free enterprise economic system we have, supposedly responsible for our country's prosperity, multi-party representative government, emphasis on an educated public making the decisions, the voucher system becoming more popular, free press, middle class, equal opportunity, all American philosophy, 3 cheers. I had people say to me, what do you mean 3 cheers? Hip hip hooray, hip hip hooray, hip hip hooray. The final point I want to make in conjunction with the utilitarianism lectures and the final point I just made about limiting inheritance, what is the most utilitarian way, what is the best way to distribute property for purposes of making for the greatest happiness, for the greatest number? And I like to put this in terms of an example that I will steal in part from the great book and play Les Miserables, and to embellish just a little bit, it is the story of a very poor man named Jean Valjean. You can call him John if your French isn't up to par. He can't find a job. He walks 20 miles every day looking for a job. When he lived in France back then, there weren't jobs for everybody. I've had students write, oh, anyone who wants a job can find one. Well, not in this example. He is not one of the undeserving poor. He is deserving. He wants a job, walks 20 miles every day looking for a job, can't find a job. He's living with his sister and her 2 children. She is a widow. She has a place to live, but she doesn't have a job either. She has to stay home and take care of the kids. They didn't have daycare in those days. And they don't have any money. He doesn't have a job. She doesn't have a job. They have no money coming in. They have no food. The sister's children are slowly starving to death. Very painful for him, of course, to watch his sister's children slowly starve to death. So one night he decides to take a walk around the streets of Paris, France, the city where he's living, get some fresh air, try to clear his mind. He walks past the house of a very rich person. Big party going on inside, say 50 loaves of bread cooling on the windowsill, 500 loaves of bread, 5,000 loaves of bread cooling on the windowsill, more bread, he realizes, than the people at the party ever will be able to eat. He realizes at best the extra bread is going to be fed to the dogs. At worst, the extra bread is going to be thrown into the garbage. And so he thinks to himself, shall I take a loaf of this rich person's extra bread, give it to my sister's starving children? Note, this is not a selfish act. He is not taking the bread for himself. He wants to give it to starving children. In fact, if he gets caught taking the bread, he himself is going to be in a lot of trouble, which of course is the way the actual story develops. But he thinks to himself, if I take a loaf of this rich person's extra bread, give it to my sister's starving children, how many people will get how much happiness? How many people will get how much unhappiness? For the sister's starving children, they get not only the happiness of eating the bread and my experiences backpacking. When you're really hungry, anything tastes delicious. But not only do the kids get the pleasure, the happiness from eating the bread, now they don't have to die, at least for the moment. They don't have to die in terms of happiness or unhappiness. Death counts to the maximum extent of unhappiness. What makes you more unhappy than thinking that you're going to die? I can tell you, the most unhappy day of my life was the day my father died, and I'm not looking forward to the day my mother dies or the day my brother dies. Nothing is worse than death. Nothing makes people more unhappy than death. And so the sisters' children for now will avoid death, avoid the maximum amount of unhappiness. On the other hand, what about the rich person? They may not even notice that the extra bread is gone. If the rich person does notice that the extra bread is gone, the only pain the rich person will feel, the only unhappiness the rich person will feel, is the relatively minor annoyance that we feel when some of our extra stuff gets taken. And it is annoying when some of your stuff gets taken. I like to use an example. When my brother, the history professor, went to India with the faculty to study the culture of India to get ready to come back here and teach World Civ, one of the faculty taking a number of taxis around the city, I had the same experience in Bangkok and Thailand. The taxi drivers try to cheat you a little bit on every fare. They can cheat you out of a lot of money. The fare is cheap. It's only $2 or $3 to begin with. But they know that you can't do the conversion of the currency to dollars in your head, so they try to take an extra quarter, or they try to take an extra 50 cents. And one of the faculty, this was like the 5th time somebody had done this to her, and when she realized it, she started screaming at the taxi driver, "You're a thief. You're all a bunch of thieves. You have no respect for private property." And my brother went in and tried to tell her, calm down, it's only 50 cents. It's not worth having a heart attack over. What does 50 cents mean to me? After all, I will never be down to my last 50 cents. I will never be down to my last $50. I will never be down to my last $500. I'll never be down to my last $5,000. The way they pay me, I'll never be down to my last $50,000. What does 50 cents mean to me? Absolutely nothing. What does it mean to the taxi driver? Maybe especially if he can do this a few times a day, he'll have a few extra dollars, can buy more rice for the family. His children won't be so hungry when the children go to school. They'll be able to focus better on their lessons, get better grades, get a better job, take care of themselves and the family in the future. Means almost nothing to the rich person, just the relatively minor annoyance. And again, it is a minor annoyance. Sometimes people bust a gut, but compared to the unhappiness, the pain of dying, the relatively minor annoyance that we feel when some of our extra stuff gets taken, compare that to the death of the children. So he realizes the happiness is all on the side of the children, takes the rich person's extra bread, gives it to the starving children. This is called the principle of subsistence. Root word to subsist, to live, sometimes called the right to life, sometimes called respect for life. If you need something to live, without it you die. Somebody else has extra, by rights it should be yours. You're starving, you have no food, we have extra, we part with some of our extra. We don't actually send you the extra food, of course. It might spoil on the way, but we pay taxes, money I might have used to buy myself more food and fancier food. We pay taxes, buy you food stamps. You should be able to have food. Nobody should have to suffer the ultimate pain of death when other people have extra. Doesn't mean that much to them. Or medical care. You have a medical emergency. You go to an emergency room in the United States. Traditionally, they are not allowed to turn you away, even if you don't have the money to pay for it. We part with some of our extra money in terms of taxes. We pay the medical bill for your hospital care. They don't do this in many other countries, by the way. You have a medical emergency. You show up at the hospital. You can't pay your bill. They tell you, go die. We think they don't have as much respect for life as we do. In that way, we think they are not as civilized as we are. Rich people, of course, don't like this very much. Rich people counter with what's called the principle of security or private property. Rich people saying, in effect, to the government, if you do not secure my private property, laws against theft, police, courts, jails, if the poor can come and take whenever they need, then especially given how many poor there are and how few rich there are, eventually they're going to take everything I got, or almost everything I got. In which case, why should I keep working? I don't work hard to give money to the poor. I work for myself. I work for my family. When I get paid, I don't walk around Ocean Beach giving out money to the poor. I spend it on myself. I spend it on my family. If the poor can come and take whenever they need, they'll take everything the rich got, or almost everything the rich got. The rich won't work. Less will be produced. We'll have more hungry people instead of fewer hungry people. That's the opposite of what we want. And so the first thing you have to do, the rich say, to have any kind of happiness in society, secure private property. The poor can come and take whenever they need. Nobody will work. Nothing will be produced. We'll have mass starvation. The poor will reply, yes, you worked and I didn't. For whatever reason, you found a job. I couldn't. I tried as hard as I could. I walked 20 miles a day, but I couldn't find a job. You did. From that point of view, you did better than me. From that point of view, you deserve more than me. But how much more do you deserve? You deserve the best in life. You deserve New York steak, oysters, Rockefeller. I deserve the least in life, macaroni and cheese out of a box, SpaghettiOs out of a can. But is anybody so deserving? They should be able to waste what other people need. If you wasted something, of course, it meant nothing to you. You threw it away, you threw it in the garbage, it meant nothing. Unless you get happiness from throwing away and wasting things that other people need. As an ethics teacher, I've never been sure what I should say about somebody who got happiness from wasting things that other people need. You wasted it, it meant nothing to you. You needed it, it meant everything to you. Death lasts for all of eternity, an infinite amount of time. So you wasted, it meant nothing. You needed it, it meant an infinite amount, infinity to nothing. Everything to nothing. You wasted it meant nothing. You needed it meant everything. Nobody is so deserving. They should be able to waste what other people need. And so you are the judge in this case. Who was right? Who was wrong? We have the rich person, we have the poor person, we have Jean Valjean. And Jean Valjean, of course, has brought the kids into the courtroom to cry and try to invoke your sympathy as the judge. Come on, judge, all the guy did was take a loaf of bread from some rich person who was going to waste it anyway, give it to us kids so we didn't have to starve, so we didn't have to die. You don't think that was the wrong thing to do? You don't think that was immoral, do you, judge, to prevent us from dying? On the other hand, there's the rich person saying to the judge, Judge, we can't allow this. We have to secure private property. If the poor can come and take whenever they need, they'll take everything I got, almost everything I got. The rich won't work. Nothing will be produced. Everyone will starve. That's the worst thing. We can't have that, Judge. Chop off their hand. Who is right? Who is wrong? And do this in utilitarian terms. I think the poor person was right to take the bread. This will make for the greatest happiness because, or I think the bread should be left with the rich person. This will make for the greatest happiness because, And if you think that what the poor person did was wrong, what should the sentence be? What should the punishment be? If you decide that what the poor person did was not wrong, then what about the principle of security? If the poor can take from the rich whatever they want, would people work? Would anything be produced? Wouldn't we all starve? But traditionally, I like to finish this with a quotation from the famous Mother Teresa. I believe in my devil lecture, or in my God lecture, I did not refer specifically to Mother Teresa as a cosmic gold digger or a seeker of cosmic orgasms, although I used to do that in class. And so one of my good Catholics at the Catholic school got me this book of quotations to try to put a different side to Mother Teresa. As I was reading through it, this one, directly in line with the considerations I was just advancing in the previous part of the lecture, Mother Teresa writes, "There are people who can afford the luxury to live in great comfort. It is possible they have earned the privilege by their efforts. You worked, I didn't. You deserve more than me. It is possible they have earned the privilege by their efforts. What irritates me is to see that extravagance exists. It irritates me to see some people waste and throw away things that we could use. I would prefer, of course," she said, food, things that we need. It irritates me to see some people waste and throw away things that we need. It irritates Mother Teresa to see rich people waste things that poor people need. Mother Teresa, of course, was a nun. She didn't have any children of her own. If this was your family, if these were your children, they were starving, and you saw these rich people over here who had plenty of extra food, and instead of giving the extra food to your kids so your kids didn't have to starve, they threw it away instead and let your kids starve. Go starve, kids. Do you think that would only irritate you, or do you think you might be absolutely furious? As one of my former students, a military guy, once said, you'd really have to question the moral character of somebody who would do something like that. As an ethics teacher, I really like the way he put that. You really have to question the moral character of somebody who would waste what other people need. And so I've always said the extra credit answer, thinking outside the box. It's not the poor person who has committed the crime. Anybody who would see a rich person with extra food throwing it away, take that extra food, give it to the poor, that's what any sensible person would do. That's not a crime. Rich people made those laws. That's why it's a crime. The crime was committed by the rich person, wasting what other people need, in effect condemning those kids to death, not caring if those kids died. And that was the extra credit answer, and so I find I have to give extra credit to the current Pope, Pope Francis. Francis says wasting food is like stealing from the poor. Gosh, I've been saying that's the extra credit answer to this example for many years, for decades. It's the rich person who did something wrong. And now I'm teaching at a Catholic school, and I have a Pope who agrees. Wasting food is like stealing from the poor. What should the punishment be?